chat is asking about updates. Um, like the frequency of updates, is it in a shared space, considering there's contending bills here, right? So how do we navigate
Let me
that?
add, if I may. As she said correctly, that as information comes available, he contacts us. But we also we know certain things are rising in temperature. We make phone calls out to him
Okay.
and try to get the information that we need. I have to admit, it is a unique situation
Yeah.
to have a lobbyist that represents two parties. When we're completely separate, it makes sense. When we have issues that are more concentric, it makes for questions sometimes.
All right, good questions, directors. Any other questions? Okay. Probably worth noting around the first item, House Bill 573, this committee submitted a letter to the committee, as we discussed at our last meeting, just giving our fiduciary guidance on the impact of the bill if it was passed as drafted. Any feedback, anything you want to speak to? What happened with transmission?
I don't believe we've received any feedback. You want me to share who we sent it?
I'm sorry?
Do you want me to share?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so the letter that was approved by the committee was sent to the chair of the House Committee on Municipal and Parochial Affairs. It was also shared with the mayor and members of her team, and also the author of the bill, Representative Hilferty.
Yep. And on that last point, the letter speaks to modifications, potential modifications to the bill that might be less detrimental to the utility. And so we thought it prudent to provide it to the author so that that could be considered even before the bill is heard by committee. Okay. All right. With that, I'd like to pause before we move into further into the agenda and propose an amendment to the agenda to include a brief discussion on the executive performance review cycle. This would be a discussion-only item, and just to help us align on structure and timing ahead of our upcoming board meeting on the 22nd of April. So can I have a motion to amend the agenda accordingly?
So moved.
Second.
All right. I understand I need to check for public comment before we move into discussion. Is there any public comment on this amendment?
No public comment.
All right. Is there any discussion on this amendment?
On the actual amendment?
On the amendment?
Oh, you can proceed, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
No nays, abstentions? Okay, the agenda is amended. We will not jump to that agenda item just yet. I just wanted to make sure we put it on the agenda. Now we will move into our first discussion item, which is the 2026 Board of Directors Retreat. And I have comments. I'm sure others have comments, but we will defer to staff to give a bit of feedback on our retreat.
Okay.
Oh, that's my slide.
No, I'll go right ahead. Well, I thought it was an excellent retreat. I have to say, I've been involved with 3 other cities, and I've never had a retreat that I thought moved smoothly, that the information provided was very detailed, and really, I think, helped the board have a better understanding what it is to be a board member and the responsibilities associated with it. What came out of the retreat were a couple of good things. One, there was a discussion that the board members enjoyed having the information presented the way it was, and asked, could we very well have many, not retreats, but informational sessions where we could provide additional detailed information and really do a deep dive on some of the issues. I thought that was great. We also looked at talked with EPA. We had Andrew Sawyers, who's the #1 person for water at EPA and was #2 deputy dealing with the wastewater at one time. And so he came and said that our plan that we had was a good plan, but also said that his office would be willing to talk to us about pursuing additional funding opportunities. So we're actively, trying to have those conversations with him. And there also was a request to schedule another retreat later this year that focuses solely on communications. That's one issue that we've talked, and I know Director Scruggs has talked to us often about that. We're going to have to improve our communications. In all honesty, I have to find a way to build up the staffing in the communications department so that we're able to take on those responsibilities. With all the things that we have to do, we have to keep the public educated. And so to do so, having an outward-facing communications department is very important. And it would include the development of agreed-upon metrics on how communications is performing. Again, we had the comments from Andrew. Okay. So I think it's good to say, I thought it was excellent that we had the training on what it is to be a board member and what's required.
Yeah.
I thought that went well. Again, we had the EPA come and speak. We also had a moderator come again and talk about being a board member. And she had been with, I believe, GE, and so that brought a professional parameter to what we were talking about. And then I thought it was just excellent for staff to be with the board members and have a chance to talk and get to know each other and to go over some of the issues. So I'm a big proponent on us continuing to have the mini retreat and have deep dives on different informational needs as required.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Director Hayman. Jamie, do you have any comments?
No.
Okay. All right, directors, any feedback from the retreat, things that you want to highlight for discussion before we go into, go ahead.
I think it was just kind of echoing what Edie is saying, is that it's excellent that we were all in the room. I was excited to meet like the staff and actually have their faces. One part that I think that we really honed in on, and I'm glad that, you know, Director Scruggs had the fireside chat and also kind of directly engaged with Councilman Hughes. I think that that was a big deal. I think that we actually had an opportunity to kind of put everything on the table, so to speak. You know, so I'm looking forward to, you know, having continued engagement with him, but also when we discussed ourselves with our engagement with our respective council people. So I think that that was a good takeaway, and, you know, kudos to us being able to have the environment that we were open and sharing all of our ideas and concerns about that. So I was excited about that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Director Greenidge.
One last thing, if I may. We talked about financial needs, and remember, we talked about the different treatment plants and all. And so I'm working with Caitlin to make sure that we're able to have a more holistic understanding of where the needs are, what they are, the extent of the needs, and the financial responsibilities that we have, so that we can work with the city better to try to go after monies at the federal level.
Yes.
Okay. All right, no problem. Jamie, can you advance? So I tried to pull down some of the themes that that I took away from the retreat. These are four. I think there's a fifth one that's probably represented at the bottom, which is the board's role in all of this. And so that's some of the comments that our directors have made. But the four main themes that I pulled out was the infrastructure risk and system vulnerability. We spent considerable amount of time at the beginning of the day going through all the different parts of our system, how the water is made, and with specific emphasis on vulnerability points. And I think we walked away understanding there are quite a few, and sort of the degree and what they are, which I think is really important for the board to understand. We talked about capital strategy, as Director Hayman just mentioned, and significant financial constraints. I think we walked away better understanding them, and maybe understanding from our staff what we're doing, what we can do, and what we're doing to try to meet the day, including the discussion with the EPA that enlightened us a bit. I'll skip to the last one, the communications and public trust gap. We talked about that. It seems like that was a recurring theme from beginning to the session all the way to the end. And so that's why I pulled it out as a point for us to talk about and what our role is on pushing improvement in that regard. And then the reactive versus proactive operations. There was a statement that said we are forced to a large degree to be reactive, but I think I took away through quite a bit of the retreat that that is in fact the case, not just operationally, but in lots of different regards. We are positioned to have to always be responsive to the next thing that's happening instead of being able to rest a bit more in a proactive approach. And so my understanding of the role of a board is to push for long-range planning and proactive movement. And so that's why we've raised that as a theme for us, is that this is a big part of our responsibility to make sure this organization can be more proactive. So I want to just take a couple moments to allow any discussion, if you'd like, on the bullet points at the bottom. How do we reflect some of these priorities in executive goals and KPIs? That's the item that we've just added to the agenda, what that review cycle is going to look like. I think it's going to be up on both this committee, the board, and staff to make sure we pull these themes and it's reflected in goals, and to the degree we have input on KPIs, it's reflected in the KPIs. So we can talk about that now, or we can talk about it in the agenda item that we're rolling into. And then the board's role in communication. What is it? We're not management. We learned that at retreat, right? So what's going to be the board's role on this particular point? And then how can our committees align our work? There was some points of discussion during the retreat about the role of committees, not just, governance, who was involved in the retreat, but operations and the like. So how can committees align their work so it's all focused on the priorities that we've identified from the retreat? So I'll open the floor for if there are any discussion points. Yes.
The one thing I did want to note is one of the reasons that kind of came out for that reactive approach is directly tied into our capital strategy and the financial constraints. We did the deep dive as far as how we look when it comes to our bond rating and things of that nature, but also what are our limitations as far as budget, which again, like I said, ties into the reactive. We can plan, but we also have a lot of financial constraints based upon our actual operating budgets, the fees that we're receiving, the bills that are getting paid and things like that, plus, of course, our legal balances and things like that. But I did want to say, if I was to switch this, I would definitely say our plan, I feel like we walked away with the plan, which was solid, but we are under a lot of financial constraints that, people are not aware of.
Yeah.
So.
I think one thing I want to highlight, I think that we get to this point because, like you said, there was a constant theme of our external communications efforts. I think that one of the reasons we were able to be so productive is that for the first time in my 2 years, we had just a heightened internal communications opportunity. We had staff along with a full board member, full board allocation representing citizen members, city council, as well as the mayor's office. This is a unique opportunity to serve. It is the highest opportunity for transparency and congruency that I've ever read about. That's why I wanted to serve. Mm-hmm. We have great opportunity. I think we saw it on display. Everyone got to voice. Mm-hmm. Everyone got to learn from each other. And so I think that we shouldn't blow past what fueled this. And so when I look at our executive goals and how we're moving forward, I think we're now more informed than we were before as far as how we function as a board. I think we have a higher degree of efficiency and directive as we discuss, the three positions that we are stewards of, if you will, as well as refining the work of each committee and staying out of the weeds. I think that at times that may have happened, right? But again, I think that all that was fueled by our highest level of internal communication that we hadn't seen.
Yeah. I would agree. I mean, it sits with me as a role and the responsibility of governance to push for maximizing or optimizing the existing structure. And to your point, Director Kennedy, I think we saw on display that it can be highly to our benefit for us to do so. We did talk about, and I won't go into detail, but I mentioned to board relations, I tried to memorialize all the different ideas and action points that we discussed. It's 14 pages of ideas and action items from that retreat. Some of them included things like, tracking attendance and making sure that there's a representative from the city council office if that councilman or director can't be present. Making sure that we provide council district briefings on what is happening in their district so they understand with that very focused lens, this is what's happening. So these types of things that I think maximize the collaboration that's built into the structure. I want this committee to hear, I think that is a role of governance to push for utilization of structure and optimization in that regard. Also, before we move on, we talked about, and both our staff members talked about, or Director Heyman talked about, and Director Greenwich, I believe, talked about the opportunity to do this again, right? A mini retreat. There was a request for deep dives, there were requests for educational sessions, and then requests for clarity on what we can do and what we can't do, and so on and so forth. So that are another handful of items that I think sit in part with this committee. So moving forward, you'll hear, I'll try, with the help of staff, to bring some of those items to the table and then put them into action. In fact, you should have a summary of open meetings law practical guidance in your hand that is not from special counsel, that is from me. Special counsel will review and make sure that we got it right before we disseminate further. But I wanted to at least bring that to you as something I know this group asked for during the retreat, and I'm turning it back to you for your consideration. Any other comments or feedback from the retreat? All right, so let's move on to our second discussion item, and that is the 2026 Executive Performance Review Cycle. Is it not going? Okay. Okay, so as you know, a part of the responsibility of the Board of Directors is the appointment management of our three executives, our Executive Director, our Special Counsel, and our General Superintendent. This committee embarked on establishing a review process, an evaluation process at the close of the last calendar year, which included quite a few meetings and deliberations on structure and framework. We provided that framework, and then we utilized that framework for our previous special counsel and our previous general superintendent. Then, just to tell the story, then we moved into the interim space, and we utilized that framework to create a second framework, which is the interim readiness framework that used the same review metrics and just translated them into an interim context, and we memorialized that framework. So now we have yet one more that we need to do, and that is to solidify what I think is the existing review cycle, and just clarify that we are now applying it to all executives, and not just our executive director. So my understanding of history is that we haven't regularly evaluated our other two executives, and we agreed some meetings ago that we would pull them into the evaluation cycle. So what I've tried to do here is put on paper what that cycle looks like from my understanding, and invite the board or the committee to discuss it along with staff, and make sure we are aligned. I didn't want to defer this another meeting because we are in April, And goal setting probably shouldn't happen at the halfway point of the calendar year. So it's up there with some urgency that we need to get through the goal setting piece. So with that, it's on the board. I'll open the floor for discussion points, thoughts on whether this is sufficient, whether the timing works. Yeah, floor is open.
I will say, I think this is sufficient. We took a lot of time last year developing this, so I think this is a great way to kind of memorialize how we regulate evaluation, so.
Okay. Thoughts, staff? Is this reflecting sort of what existing cycle has been?
From what I know, I think it's close. If someone else has a comment, go ahead and add, but I think this is, I do know I believe there was a mid-year in the past, and then they had their final. But as far as the details of it, I would have to rely on others on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I wasn't directly involved, but I think it was done for the ED by the first quarter, the last step.
The last step is done. So, okay. So, go ahead.
That's correct. Yeah.
The evaluation's done the first quarter.
That's how it was done.
Okay, perfect. That's my understanding. So that's why I wanted to put it on the table and make sure that we are aligned, not just on what historically has been done, but that we are okay with this. So any feedback from staff on whether this needs to be adjusted at all? I think the KPI alignment, I don't know if we've done that in the past or we've called it that. We probably have done it and just didn't call it KPI alignment. But the thought here is, to the degree there are goals, there are measurable points under those goals, and that the board and executives would be in consultation and collaboration on setting them so that we're all clear on expectations before we kick off and move through toward an evaluation process. All right. Okay, so we can move on to just one more slide really quickly. Okay, so this is what it looks like for us then. If with that process in place, that means we would be expecting goal presentation at the April meeting unless staff tells me otherwise. That's what we'd be looking for. We'd use April and sometime in May to get aligned on KPIs. We try to do some check-in mid-year around October, and then we do the performance and compensation conversation and any contractual considerations if a contract is relevant in March Q1. Thoughts on the timeline?
I hope I'm not opening any kind of can of worms, but how is this impacted from like a proration piece? Like if someone is starting mid-year or they're in like, where's our wiggle room on that? And I feel like that's a loaded question, but I'm just curious how that goes with the alignment of the timing.
Yeah, I think it's a really good one. Any feedback from directors before I comment?
I think that, you have your onboarding period, and it's,
Right.
I think your interview process, informs, what you're holding that transition time accountable for. I think that this process, and this is just my thought, that's something that would kick in after you've had that transition. And so the timing of a onboarding will certainly impact. And I think it's on a case by case in that scenario. That's how I would want to approach this. I don't think I think we have something separate for, those first 100 days, or if you will.
Okay.
Really informed by what we discovered in the interview process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think my understanding is that for the executives, I mean, historically, it's been one executive that's been evaluated formally.
Right.
And that maybe the timeline has been a bit more fluid, especially when someone is coming in and so on and so forth. I think what we're trying to do is create a default cycle Okay. This is what we do unless it's not practical because someone comes in March, right?
Okay.
Right? And to Director Kennedy's point, I would agree that the interview process and onboarding probably sets some immediate expectations that would maybe supersede our regular review. But at some point, that executive would move from the transition period into the full regular review cycle. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends on when they come on. If they came on in the summer, then you got like a little bit of a lag period, but if they came on in November,
Right.
then they just slip right into the
Review
schedule.
cycle,
Yes,
exactly.
I think setting, because I was thinking the same thing, and then before I asked the question, I was like, let me, having a more rigid structure would be better for everybody as far as the timing goes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And hopefully we're not, we won't be having much more movement. Okay, so we'll have people that are sticking around for some time, and then we can just get into the review cycle. Director Kennedy, you have another comment?
No, it's just,
No? Okay, if there are no other comments or questions, we will now move into executive session. May I have a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
Any questions, discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. We are now in executive session. We'll wait on Director Thomas to come back. No. Oh, maybe not. All right, may I have a motion to exit executive session, please?
I'll move.
Second.
All right, it's been probably moved and seconded. Any questions? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. We are now in regular session. I'll note for the committee, there is one information item for the committees to review at their convenience. It is the letter that we provided to the House committee and members, and to the mayor and her team, and to the author of HB 573. You can take a look at it at your convenience. Are there any public comments?
No public comment.
All right. If there are no other matters, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
No abstentions, no objections. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you.